taken the first application for spinal cord injury and that the FDA has a task force to regulate. The FDA needs to regulate. I mean, let's put ourselves in the shoes of the FDA, right? If one thing happens to one of these patients, who are they going to come after? The FDA. How did you approve this? This wasn't safe. So the FDA has its own task force, so we are moving in the right direction. But we have lost a significant amount of time. Unfortunately, this is not political stance in any way, shape, or form. I'm actually Brazilian. I don't even vote. But the Bush administration has hampered. How can we progress human embryonic stem cell research to the level of expertise to match what our scientists can do with $26 million a year? How? But we are doing our best. Go ahead, Jim.
Early on you talked about cancer and the interventions of
radiotherapy
and chemotherapy, and that one has an advantage over the other. Then you compared it to embryonic stem cells and adult stem cells.
Right.
Can you describe for me the advantage that adult stem cells have over embryonic stem cells?
Sure, absolutely. The first and foremost is that adult stem cells, especially the ones that are from the same patient, they have the genetical match, right? So this study that I showed you for heart failure, and that's being done in Brazil, that was published, and now it's recruiting 1,200 patients. These are bone marrow, adult stem cells isolated from your own bone marrow, processed in the laboratory, and transplanted into your heart. You have no worries whatsoever that there could be rejection due to genetic differences. So that on the embryonic stem cell side, the initial studies that we've done, that's not I personally, other laboratories, have shown that because these cells are derived from embryos, they're immunoprivileged. For example, when you're an adult, you see what develops our antigens, or what would make a cell be rejected by our body, are these antigens on the surface. And we develop these when we come in contact with bacteria, viruses. These embryonic stem cells, because they've been derived from embryos are immunoprotected, immunoprivileged. They're not in the outside world encountering bacteria and viruses to develop these cell surface antigens. So there is initial preliminary research that shows that the cells might be immunoprivileged, therefore would not induce rejection upon patients. And the animal studies certainly show that. So we have not seen, there's hundreds of animal studies published with improper genetic match where you don't see acute rejection. So that's one advantage of adult stem cells right away.
Gabriela, great talk.
Thank you, thank you.
I want to play devil's advocate for a moment. You mentioned Jamie's invention, Yamanaka's invention, of these pluripotent stem cells. And we heard the President of the United States in his State of the Union speech make reference to it as the answer for embryonic stem cells, for human embryonic stem cells. So the question is, do you see your work moving in that direction quickly or slowly? And what's regulating your own lab in terms of making that move?
So we continue to work with the human embryonic stem cells because we want to recapitulate. My work is focused on development of the brain, right? So the human embryonic stem cells, from the 5 years that we've studied them, we know, we and others, such as Suchan, even showed that even the times when the first serotonergic neuron shows up in the human brain, it shows up in the dish. So for me, as a scientist of human development, human embryonic stem cells have been the gold standard to recapitulate human development. That's why I have not, see, the induced pluripotent stem cells, they might be an extremely effective vehicle to generate patient-specific stem cells for transplantation, to understand, for example, did you know that 25% of patients, like many of us in this room, have mutations in our liver metabolism gene, so that's why I can take 5 Tylenols and you take 5 and you're getting a liver transplant. So if we're able to generate embryonic stem cells carrying those mutations, we're able to maybe create drugs, that are specific to certain patients. So those are 3 different applications that I talked to you about. For me, in studying early development, birth defects, and then even my company commercializes, tries to develop screens to sell to the pharmaceutical industry and to evaluate the effects of chemicals. We need to be able to recapitulate early development. And this is an area, how else can we recapitulate human development? How can we study? How can we study how the human brain forms on a daily basis if it weren't for human embryonic stem cells? So that's why. Does that clarify your question? So we might move, I'm interested in metabolism. So if, we're able to start working metabolism, I would work with iPS cells in a heartbeat to generate, cells that have specific polymorphisms in certain genes. But for the early work that we're doing, human embryonic stem cells have been our gold standard.
Yeah, the only comment I would make is that your response just now has been lost. It really hasn't been heard. Anyway.
Right. Because, this is a challenge that we have faced as scientists ever since really the beginning of this research, is that the people that oppose, and we respect, stem cell research is not a religious issue, it's not a political issue, but the people that oppose to stem cell research, who we respect so highly, really take advantage of certain media communications and campaigns and whatnot, as opposed to, the scientists. And that's one of the, I don't know if you know, but this is one of the areas where GPI has a mission, where the institute that Bernie Siegel is the executive director of, is to promote and to create those vehicles for public perception and for communication.
Can I make a quick announcement?
Sure.
I apologize. I'm the education chair of the Student Society for Stem Cell Research, and we're holding a panel in a few minutes where we're featuring students who are leading this grassroots movement from the universities to further stem cell research. So I just was wondering if after you're done, if you guys are done answering your questions, you can make your way upstairs to 335 and view that talk. Thank you.
Are you, changing subjects, are you following what's going on at Duke with Joanne Kurtzberg's study of cerebral palsy using umbilical cord blood stem cells?
No, I know several scientists that study umbilical cord, actually in South America. I mean, this is also a very, we've had these banks that have been established for many, many years, and there's some initial work showing that umbilical cord stem cells that are considered adult stem cells can indeed differentiate into other cell types. So like I said, we go back to the trying to choose between chemotherapy and radiation therapy, when the policy and the support, in my vision, should be that all stem cell research areas should be able to move forward. Because, for example, in this case, for heart disease, if the autologous transplantation, we might even break down heart disease into 10 different types of heart disease, right? It could be that adult stem cells are more efficacious in ischemia, and human embryonic stem cell derived cardiomyocytes are more effective in a different type called a cardiomyopathy, or acute infarct. So everybody needs to be able to move forward.
Yeah, I understood that Brazilian study was using the umbilical cord blood stem cell because of its immunologically immature position.
Right.
It hadn't had the markers developed so that they were having broader flexibility of the cell to use in that study.
Yeah, this study from Circulation that was published in Circ Research, it was from bone marrow, not umbilical cord. But there's a lot of work being done in Brazil with umbilical cord as well. And even dental pulp.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yes, as someone who works in the budget and policy area, when I heard you mention that Glaxo had invested $25 million with Harvard, my reaction is, well, that's great, then state government or federal government doesn't have to get involved. We're always looking for ways not to spend money.
Right.
What's the advantage or the downside of having stem cell research primarily